started. Again, feel free to help yourself to some coffee, some water, some breakfast if you haven't. We are missing 2 students, but we're going to get started because it's graduation weekend and they may have stayed out a little late. So if they join us, we'll welcome them to the stage. But I did want to just introduce myself. Veronica Flass-Puller, president of the Alumni Association. And it's just so wonderful to be here with you all this morning doing this program. And my understanding is this program is something that the Alumni Association has been doing for over 40 years. It started in the spring of 1982, and I'm really excited about this format, and this will give us an opportunity to hear from all the panelists, but also open it up to you all towards the end. And if there's something that you're really excited about asking, want to make sure you get the opportunity to do that as well. But as we go through these questions and you hear their answers, I really hope that you use that as an opportunity to also just reflect on your time here at Carolina and how you would answer that yourself as well. But we're going to go ahead and get started with our alumni and having them introduce themselves and then our students. For our alumni, if you could share your name and where you've been since graduation and what you've been doing.
I'm here. I'm Dorothy Clark Van Meter. Graduated obviously in 75 with a degree in math. And from there I went to medical school at the University of Mississippi, which is where I was from. I was in state, it was cheap. And then I went to residencies at University of Kentucky and Indiana University in plastic surgery, and came back to Lexington, Kentucky, where I practiced until 2018 and then retired. I'm married to my husband Woody, who probably isn't here yet, but anyway, he's around. He's here somewhere. He's a retired ophthalmologist, and we have 2 children, a daughter in Nashville and a son in Washington.
Good morning, I'm Michael Boner. Besides graduating in 75, I finished my master's in 77 here in public health, and lived in Asheville for 2 years in Greensboro doing family planning and WIC programs. I changed into medical sales and marketing. I lived in Greensboro for 10 years, then Chicago for 6 years, Baltimore for 24 years, and Durham for 5 years, and now I made it to Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm done moving, that's it.
My name is Robert Hackney. I'm from Wilson. I came here in 1971, as all the rest of us did. Was a history major as an undergrad. I was trying to find a way to stay in Chapel Hill as long as I possibly could, so I went to law school and business school because I couldn't get into medical school. But I was able to stay here 4 more years, so I finished with a law degree and an MBA in 1979. Moved to New York City against all thoughts that I ever had in my life that I would do. Have been there for about 50 years. Since 1979, moved out of the city a year ago. My wife, Shawn Allman, is back here, and I live now in Kiel Island, South Carolina. So we finally gotten back to where people talk correctly.
And I forgot to add that I was born and raised in Clarksville, Mississippi.
My name is Carl Fox. I grew up in Mount Olive. I came to school here in 1971. I majored in English, which would now be speech because I found the speech department split off from the English department. I lived in Morrison dorm when I was in undergraduate school. I was in campus governing council and some other things, but the biggest thing I'm known for at UNC is that we taught mixology. When I was an undergrad in law school, I went to law school here and entered in 75 and graduated in 78. I never left, really. I got a job out of law school as an assistant district attorney in this district, Chatham and Orange counties, and served there for 6 years. I was appointed district attorney by Governor Hunt and served 5 terms as district attorney, and then was appointed by Governor Easley to the Superior Court bench, where I served for a little bit over 15 years as a senior resident Superior Court judge. And I retired in 2020, but I didn't really retire. So I started out as a a mediator, wasn't busy enough, and people tell you when you get ready to retire, what's your plan? I went, plan? What do you mean by plan? And I've heard horror stories about people retiring and then volunteering full time, and I didn't want to do that, so I opened a solo practice where I had no authority whatsoever after being in those positions, and now I practice law and mediate, and I live in Chapel Hill with my wife, Julia.
Thank you. And I think we have our students up next. So for our students, if you could, when you introduce yourself, share your name, where you're from, your major. And I'm not going to ask you to tell us what you're doing after college. So just one fun fact about yourself.
Hi, my name's Abby Rogers. I'm from Apex, North Carolina. I was an English and Comparative Literature major with minors in History and African American Studies. And a fun fact about me is that I was also a Global Gap Year Fellow, so I took a gap year before coming to Carolina.
Hey everyone, I'm Scott Gill. I was, a music and exercise sports science major at the university. My fun fact about me, I served in Cluffing, UNC's oldest a cappella group, as their music director for 3 years, and since I was a senior in high school, made my college experience so great, and my family's from Pittsburgh, North Carolina.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Mia Garcia. I am originally from Roxford, North Carolina, just a little bit outside of here. My majors are in political science and human organizational leadership and development. And I have a minor in conflict management. And a fun fact about me is that I was able to study abroad for a semester in Brussels through Honors Carolina.
All right, well, let's get this show on the road, and thank you all for being here. The first question, and we can start with our alumni first, and then move on to our students. How did you get to Chapel Hill? Who brought you, and what did you bring?
I'm the fifth of 5 girls. The first 4 went to Tulane. I grew up in Mississippi, and I didn't want to go to New Orleans because it was the early 70s, and I did not want my hair frizzing. And then I had a sister that was a cheerleader for Tulane, and I think Tulane played Carolina and Duke in successive years, and she encouraged me to apply. And then there were a lot of guys in my hometown that went to boarding schools, and they all told me I would never get in, so that really got me going. And after that, I came here sight unseen. This was back at the book, obviously, before we did, touring campuses and interviews and revisits and everything like that. I'd never seen Chapel Hill when I set foot here.
I applied to UNC initially because I was nominated for a Moorhead Scholarship, and that required, and I had to apply with a decision, and I'm so grateful I got in then because I could never have gotten in today. When I came to school here, I think the first time I came here with my ROTC class in the planetarium. And after we went to the planetarium, we walked to the Arboretum. And after I walked to the Arboretum, I was like, this is the school I want to go to. When I came here, my parents brought me, I bought the usual stuff and a rug to go on my floor to make sure I had a rug on my floor. I wish I'd bought an air conditioner.
Well, like Carl, I applied to Carolina because I also was nominated for a Moorhead Scholarship. I was fortunate enough to get it, which made my college decision really, really easy since I had 2 sisters right behind me, and my dad was like, son, free is free. You're going to Carolina. That's easy. And they did drive me up here, and they dropped me off with, I think, a couple of boxes of stuff. And, and you just sort of never look back after that. Life changes. I remember when I came back after Thanksgiving or something, I found a way to keep a car sort of hidden in Chapel Hill because you weren't allowed to have cars as freshmen then, but I was going back and forth to Raleigh. And so felt like I needed a car, but I had this idea when I hit 54 just outside of town, driving into Chapel Hill, all of a sudden I found myself just grinning uncontrollably. It was like, oh my gosh, I just got my happy pill. And it's like, now I know why I need to stay here.
Yes, I came from a small town in Lexington, North Carolina, so 90 miles away. So your parents and I would pile into the car and drove down there. Now, our brother graduated from here, undergrad in '71, so they were familiar with the place, and so was I. So I only applied to Carolina, I didn't apply to any other school, got in, thank God, and lived in Granville Towers my 4th graduate year, so you didn't have to bring much with you because it was a furnished dorm. Had its own swimming pool, basketball court, cafeteria, so it was like ready made. I think my stereo is probably the only thing I brought that was of any accord.
Thank you. And now for our students, what do you remember? How did you get to Chapel Hill? Who brought you, and what did you bring? Probably a few more electronics, I would imagine.
Definitely. Like I said, I grew up in Apex. I don't even know what generation Tar Heel I am. I was raised in a Carolina family, and I think my dad still thinks he goes here because he's up just about every weekend for football or basketball games. So I was on campus a lot as a little kid, and when it came time to apply to school, there wasn't really a place that I saw myself other than Carolina. But when I came to campus, it was a little bit delayed because I graduated high school in 2020 in the middle of the global pandemic. And it was just kind of serendipitous that I happened to get the Global Gap Year Fellowship that year, which allowed me to take a year off before starting my freshman year, which was really great. But I moved into Granville Towers. It probably looked a little bit different than when you did, but yeah, it was great. I brought all of the normal stuff, I think, but the best thing I brought with me was my air purifier. It helped me from getting sick.
I was always in a Carolina family. My dad went to Carolina, my grandfather did. I think I'm technically 3rd generation. My sister's now a freshman here. So, total dream come true for both of my parents who had us grow up in Chapel Hill and then moved us up to Pittsburgh. I always grew up a musician, so I knew that Carolina had a strong music program, and then I was always interested in finding that other major to potentially drive me towards a future career. So UNC there was never a better option than Carolina. It doesn't suck when you're auditioning for a music department to be a guy that sings. That makes it probably a little easier. I don't know if I would have gotten it if I didn't sing, but I'm just smiling and that's going to be questions. And I think we made it this far okay.
Yeah, so for me, even though I'm from North Carolina, both my parents weren't able to go to college themselves, so being first gen was a little different because there wasn't a lot of generational, oh, you should go here, the best understanding of college. So I figured a lot of stuff out on my own. I was kind of really set on going out of state, getting out of North Carolina. I don't really know why. And then because of some of the opportunities afforded to me here, it was kind of silly for me to go anywhere else. Best decision I made, but my freshman year I lived in James. I was on the 9th floor, and the line when I was moving in was almost around the building, so me and my mom by ourselves, climbed the 9 flights with some boxes to get myself moved in. Yeah, I'm sure I brought entirely too much as well, but it was definitely very formative, got me ready for a tough time in my first few years, I think.
Okay, so now moving on to one of what for me was probably one of the most traumatic experiences as a college student, registering for classes. So talk to me a little bit about what did registering for classes, how did you register for classes when you were here?
You want us to go?
Yes.
I kind of don't remember exactly how you registered initially. It seems like you did it the semester before.
Yeah, in the summer.
In the summer, okay, and then there was this incredible, I don't know if they still have drop ad. Do they still have drop ad? It was in Carmichael, and there were all these little tables with little pieces of paper, and you could see what classes were available. And one of my favorite times for drop ad was my fall semester of my senior year, and I kind of was behind the 8 ball as far as applying to medical school because I'd mainly taken math and physics. I had all these, I was taking all these really, really hard math and science courses, and I'm looking for a really easy course to take, fill up my schedule, and I don't really do well at languages, but I remember taking one of the lower French classes, and it's pretty easy. So I thought, I'll find Spanish 1. Well, I couldn't find Spanish 1, so I ended up with German 1. And unfortunately, I could drop a class, and I was sitting there struggling in all these other classes, and I dropped German 1 with a D plus midway through the semester. I don't really remember, I don't remember registering initially.
I just know I messed it up. I believe it happened in the summer, some of you got this big packet of stuff. And, you know, in your high school, before you get here, there's a certain degree of stupidity about the way the system works. And so I decided, well, I was taking all these advanced placement classes in high school, and by gosh, I had 2 years of chemistry. I might as well sign up for this, you know, honors chemistry class that was something called organic chemistry. And like 4 other honors classes too, because by gosh, that's what it's supposed to do. And I didn't know about this drop ad thing. So I got 2 exams through chemistry, and the professor, Dr. Morrow, who was the provost at the time, you know, said, comes into classes, Mr. Hackney here. Yeah, I'm here. Come down and talk to me. And I said, yes, sir. So I come down after class, and he says, Mr. Hackney, you have a 46 average in this class. Yeah. I am not certain that even if you did perfectly on the final exam, that you can pass this class. And I'm going, yes, sir, I've done that math myself. I don't know what I would have done. He says, why are you taking this class? I said, because you need a science class. And he looked at me and he said, do you want to go to medical school? And I said, no, sir, absolutely not, sir. I want to be a tax lawyer. And he was like, can I repeat, why are you taking this class? And he finally said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You study real hard. Then he has to apply to drop the class. And I said, what do you mean drop the class? Like, can't drop the class in high school. Could here. I should have dropped the class. I figured it out later.
We should have
But,
switched.
yeah, well, he looked at me and he said, okay, here's the deal. You study as hard as you can. If I read your final exam, you take it, if I think that you've made some effort, I will pass you, I will give you a D. But if I ever hear of your applying to any medical, biological, or any school having to do with chemistry, I promise you I will personally see that you are not admitted, and I will change this grade to an F.
Hard to top that. Yeah, I mean, it really is only impactful, I guess, freshman and sophomore year. You know, upperclassmen didn't have much issue with the courses, and I think we all remember the drop out in Walden Gym. You go over there and get in line to drop the course, and then you pick a card to go to line, you want to get in the course, and then you spend your hours over there, depending on how popular the courses were. But somewhere in my mind, I remember there was something was going on in Memorial Hall. It was either a drop ad. For some reason, we ended up splitting the night outside of Memorial Hall, sleeping on the concrete sleeping bags. And me and my suite mate. And then somewhere around 4 a.m., somebody came out and said, we'll let you in now because it was cold. So we all got up and nothing happened. So we stood up till 8 o'clock until they opened the doors. I assume it was a drop ad. I don't have any reason I would be sleeping outside like that for Memorial Hall.
My memory of drop out was, you know, you kids just don't understand how lucky you are. Back then there was a spare Univac computer in the basement, the entire basement of Phillips Hall. And there were terminals in each dormitory. And they had what's called mag cards. And in drop ad, they had a box of mag cards for the backs of cards. They weren't mag cards, but a box of cards for each class. And when they ran out of cards, they knew that class was full. And so I walked around and got my cards, everything like that. And I had some openings, and I met this professor, Dr. Martha Nell Hardy, and she said, well, why don't you take a speech class? And I said, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer. I probably should do that. And I took the speech class, and I liked it so much that I ended up majoring in speech as a result of it. So it just told me how much, you know, just talking to professors like that in drop ad could make a difference in your career.
My dad worked in the registrar's office.
Oh,
when he was here. So he definitely set me up for some pretty poor expectations of how the class registration system worked. It's all online nowadays, and you get access to your shopping cart a few weeks before you're allowed to enroll, so you can go through and pick what classes you want, and it's really nice. It's like you're at the grocery store and you can pick whatever you want off the shelves, and then you get to check out, and then everything's gone. Like nothing's available anymore. So especially for me, I was an English major, but I concentrated in social justice literature, which isn't a very popular concentration, unfortunately. So there were fewer classes that were available for me, and they tended to go pretty quickly. I came in with a lot of AP credits, which aren't considered in your enrollment window credit hour calculation, because whoever has the most credits gets to go first. So it wasn't until senior year where I actually got an ideal schedule.
I was unaware of the drop ad card system. Drop ad still exists, but once again, it's all on the computer. When I was first coming to Carolina, my dad told me the story. He graduated in '97, and all of registration was over the phone as opposed to in person. And I believe there was a number that you would call, and it was an automated voice whose name was Caroline, I think. And the phone would say, please put in your class request, and you would put in all your requests. And 99% of the time, the phone would come back and it would say, request denied. And then you'd be put in the back of the line and you would try again in a couple hours. Fortunately, we didn't have to do that. As a music major, the major's pretty small, so once again, it was pretty easy to get the classes I need. What was most difficult was getting our gen ed requirements. So getting your math course taken care of, your science course, your English course. And those were pretty traumatic, as when you're an incoming freshman, you are at the bottom of the barrel, you are the last people to get whatever scraps are available for you, and you need those classes to graduate. So that was pretty stressful. I thought that I was going to go into audiology when I was coming to Carolina. I was really interested in speech and hearing sciences. I wasn't aware that it was a major that you had to start from the beginning for. I signed up for intro to audiology because it looked like a really interesting class. I ignored the fact that the number that was next to the class meant like how difficult it was. So the first number that's in the hundreds shows you how difficult it was. So like 100 classes were the easiest. So I didn't know that 582 was probably a really bad way to start your college career. I was in the class definitely as the only first semester freshman with a bunch of graduating seniors, graduate students. My only friend, who was in the Laurelites at the time, who was graduating early and is now in her master's program in speech and hearing sciences, the professor 100% knew, like you mentioned, that I did not deserve to be there, nor should I have. And he very graciously let me off with a 70 in the class when I deserved significantly lower.
For me, I think because a lot of our orientation was online too, because we're coming off of the pandemic, that really left me a little ill-informed for like what to expect around class registration. So really going into the summer of my freshman year, I just kind of thought that like, oh, I'll put all these classes in my shopping cart, and then when my enrollment period opens, I'll click the button and I'll enroll, and then that's so simple, it's so easy, great. Yeah, so I did that, or I tried to, and it was like in passing. I was in Wilmington at the time at the beach, and I was like, oh, let me like go run up and click the little button I need to click and then go. I clicked that button and every single class that was in my shopping cart is denied. It's full immediately. And I was like, wow, great, I didn't even consider that as a possibility. So I had a friend who was a junior here from my hometown, and I called him like out of nowhere, out of the blue, and I was like, hey, I didn't get any of my classes for registration. What in the world am I supposed to do? And so he had to help me through. I was quite stressed. And I figured out some classes, but even up until like the week before classes started, I was only in 9 credit hours, so I wasn't even a full-time student. So I like went door to door to classes to like beg professors to let me in, and it worked. I was in a philosophy of AI class. I was at 8 a.m. on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. Great first semester courses here. But it made me a full-time student. It got me to the 12 credit hours, but I really just had no idea what to expect, and I was really blissfully unaware that as you just don't pick the classes you want. So I've learned that much more now. So.
Well, I think we just learned what some of your least favorite classes were when you were here. So now can you tell us what your favorite class was and why?
To think about that. You start.
And whoever wants to start, whoever knows their favorite can start first, in no particular order.
I was just thinking about what they were saying. I was remembering the trauma of sitting through the placement class where you had to place out of your foreign language to get to take math or foreign language. And I remember, you all didn't have to do this, you all just don't understand. I guess maybe you did, and they said, oh, well, this will be the last English you hear. And everybody was like laughing and stuff like that, and then I said, oh. And then they started, and everybody starts laughing, and then you realize it's really serious, and I'm waiting to get out and take this, praying that I don't have to take French in college, because it would have been like you were talking about, like what you were talking about, fails for sure. I think my favorite class in undergraduate school was a speech class, and I think it was like speech 89 or something like that, and it was taught by Dr. Paul Brandis. Dr. Paul Brandis was a phenomenal professor. I mean, he taught unlike anyone else because he really made things real, in a real sense. He just didn't just lecture from the book. And at one point we were talking about taking I think I took 3 classes under him. We were talking about the exam, and he was talking about what he was going to include on the exam and what we were going to study. And I looked around the room, everybody's going like writing, taking notes, the usual thing you do in college. And I stood up and I said, okay, how many want 20 questions on the exam? And they were like, everybody was like, no! And I said, we want 3 questions on the exam. And everybody was, yeah! And so I handed him back, and like I said, oh man, we want 3 questions, that's it. And he actually like was shocked, but he said to me later, he said, Fox, I was just waiting for somebody to do something because I thought they were just like lemmings. They were just going to take whatever I said. And, but it really formed a lot of my thought in entering into law school. He later, several years later, committed suicide, and I'd seen him right before that, and it was just such a loss to me personally, and it was a loss, like a little hole in my heart when that happened. But I mean, I was so grateful for him and for the classes I took.
I've just been sitting here trying to think about what my favorite classes were. They certainly weren't organic chemistry, but I liked a lot of the English classes I took. But I guess there was a class called American Military History that Dr. Lucy taught, and I took several of his classes. He was a phenomenal teacher as well. That was a great course. It was affectionately nicknamed Guns and Boats.
Yeah, Dr. Lucci's course was famous and really, really good. We wouldn't miss that. Another one in the history department that I loved was French history. And I'm trying to remember, his first name was George. I cannot remember the professor's last name, but he'd been chair of the department for a while, and he was an actor. And, there was standing room only on the day of the history of the storming of the Bastille, because he didn't act all the parts. And then he'd come and he'd storm the Bastille, and then after he'd go, Vive la France!
Yeah, I think when you look at courses, it is the professors, it's not the actual class per se. You can have a lousy professor and a great subject matter. But I had Dr. Lucy, a great professor who became chancellor of UNCW.
Yeah.
I retired from there. Dr. Pickham and Dr. Lodgkin. Eventually, Dr. Lodgkin had a couple of courses on him. And you wonder what's going to influence you later. One of the courses was on, I think, big city politics, but specifically Chicago. Little did I know, I lived in Chicago some years later, becoming involved in Chicago politics, campaigning for Richard Daley Jr., Bernie Hansen, the 44th Ward Alderman, and really understanding what big city politics is like in a place like that. But Dr. Lucy was funny about him. It was a Bingham Hall, that big lecture hall. And never sit in the front. I wanted to sit in the front. I sit near the back so you get out easily. And I love history, man. You're sitting there, and there's some guy a few rows in front of me reading the Tar Heel. So he's got the paper up here, reading this thing, while Lucy's up there. These guys use no notes. They're just walking back and forth on the stage. It's fantastic. So Lucy's talking, he comes off the stage, he's walking down the aisle towards us, and he gets up towards this guy, and he brings his hand out, and just rips the paper out of his hand. He said, "Don't ever come to my class if you're not going to pay attention to read the newspaper." Just, fantastic individual.
I hate to be a contrarian here, but one of my favorite classes that I've taken at UNC has actually been advanced Dutch. Thanks for the laughs. I know it sounds a little oxymoronic, but I was terrified. I took Latin in high school, so when I came to Carolina, I was really nervous to take a foreign language. I took French 101, dropped it after 2 days. Took Spanish 101, dropped it after 2 days. But Dutch is actually really similar to English, and the professor that teaches Dutch at UNC, Dr. Dan Thornton, he is also in the Office of Distinguished Scholarships. Dutch is the only class that he teaches, and it's just kind of one of his personal passions. He lived in the Netherlands for several years, and he's actually one of 10 professors in the world that teach Dutch at a university level as a foreign language. So it's just been an incredible experience, and we've had so many enrichment opportunities on and off campus. We just took a trip to the North Carolina Art Museum, and he gave us a tour of all the Dutch art, which was amazing. And we've had more than one meal sponsored by the Dutch government, actually, as class bonding activities, which has been amazing.
Mine isn't quite as interesting as that. Before our sophomore year of college, the university had kind of rewrote the academic curriculum, mainly directed towards first year students. They rewrote kind of the requirements for first years, the classes you had to take, the experiences you had to have, the credits you needed to mark off. For us, it was significantly easier than it is now. We had to take one first year seminar, that's what they called it, and then a beginner English course. So I was unfamiliar of the procedure of signing up for the right seminar. A lot of people take seminars that match their major. I was not one of them. I just grabbed the first one that was available. And fortunately, the one that popped up for me was called Mathematics and Voting. So I learned, it was the political science and math department. It was at Phillips Hall, and it was my first freshman seminar. I showed up on the first day in the wrong building, and I sat down in a completely different course. The professor handed me a syllabus that was of the wrong class. I told her I was in the wrong place, and then I left for that day. And I tried again Wednesday. But the class was really interesting. We learned all about, once I got there the second day, I began to learn about mathematics of gerrymandering, drawing districts, how political maps have evolved over the years, which was really interesting and topical for the time. And even though I missed the first day, it was a very, very interesting experience.
As I've been hearing everyone answer, I think I've changed my own answer like 4 or 5 times. There are a lot of classes here that I'm really appreciative of, but the one I think I'm going to talk about is just my classics class. This class is 131, but it was a seminar, which I really appreciated, at least the recitation was. So the class itself was like a 300-person lecture, very impersonal, but my actual recitation was with the professor, and it was only with 20 other students. So that was really the part of the class that I really appreciated. And I just love classics. It's just something that I don't know, I just really enjoy it personally. But within that, we're able to like really tie a lot of classics and their themes and their morals into just like day-to-day things. And so one of the big projects we did was taking some sort of like known symbol or place in Chapel Hill and like relaying it to some sort of myth or like similar kind of classic. The thing that my group talked about was how Wilson and the bell tower looks like it's like a hat on Wilson, and how it was like it's like a myth there, like it's not sure if it's like true or not. It's supposed to be like a dunce cap because apparently some director of Duke was kind of involved in the creation of it, and so they were trying to like scheme around. But that was really fun because we were able to like go to the archives and look at different things and kind of learn about the different myths that existed around it. But really fun.
Thank you. I've heard that myth. I've always wondered if it was true or not, but sounds like there's some feet to it. All right. So the next question is sort of a two-part question. Feel free to answer both or just one. But I'm wondering, what was your favorite place to study on campus or favorite place to grab a bite to eat?
Don't everybody speak.
Studying?
That's not your choice.
I guess the undergraduate library is a popular place for all the reasons. I don't think we stood. I remember going to the back of the library, we went to the Sigma New Brothers and just hanging out and talking and then going back. It just like wasn't very constructive. So I spent most of my time studying in the dorm, I think. Favorite place to eat? Well, I lived in Granville, so you had 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, so you spent your money if you went out to eat. Used to go to Pecos Pizza a lot, because that was across the street, very popular. And then later went to the Carolina Grill. Carolina Grill?
Yeah.
Bourbon toast and tea, fries, those hot dogs, that was probably the favorite place to go for lunch. And then Pepe's at night for pizza, since it was so close to the door. Otherwise, I spent a lot of time at Ken's Quickie Mart buying junk food to take back across to the door.
Yeah, Ken's Quickie Mart was very, very popular. But yeah, I think that unlike Mike, I found a place to hide at the undergraduate library and, could avoid these people. And somehow or another got a Carol. So that became like, I'm hiding here because I actually have stuff to do. But then Carolina Grill was great. There used to be a thing called the Golden Corral. That was like an all-you-can-eat buffet or something, but in sort of a late night, they had a thing that was a big hunk of hamburger stuffed with blue cheese. And when you would cut into it, all the cheese would come out. And if it was midnight or later, that was really, really good.
Well, math doesn't require a lot of studying. It's just a lot of work. So I just sit on my bed and work out the problems. And I guess I did go to the undergraduate library a little bit, and then our sorority house had a really nice study room, so that's where I did most of the studying. I just remember the lasagna and the rat. That was always really good, and the Carolina Coffee Shop was a good place to go as well. And then also the porthole had those wonderful. And they had the little porthole windows in the side of the restaurant.
Hector's. What about Hector's?
Hector's, famous since 1969, which had hot dogs and egg roll.
Egg rolls.
Which makes no sense whatsoever anyway.
I remember it's unfortunate, but I remember all the Danziger restaurants in Chapel Hill. There was the Villateo, the Ranch House, the Zoom Zoom, the Bacchai, and the Rathskeller. And I used to love the Bacchai because it was right around the corner from He's Not Here, and then to go down into it, and because they had
food?
Like 6 o'clock until like 8 o'clock, something like that on Saturday, and I'd go there and get a sandwich. I'm trying to think of what I had, but I know I always had the apple pie with a slice of cheese, cheddar cheese, and ice cream. And even after they closed, the Rathskeller moved it was underneath in that Amber Alley, and I would go over there from my office where I was DA and get apple pie with cheese and ice cream. But I love the porthole too. I couldn't go to the grill very often because the grill was so fast. I mean, you felt like you were eating in like a silent movie. I mean, I just couldn't eat that fast.
Always a line.
Always a line, oh my gosh. But those were great restaurants. Oh, and Harrison's. I remember when Harrison's opened, it was underneath, it was on Franklin Street, it was down past the Bank of America, or NCMB at the time, down some steps and back in this little restaurant. And it was great at the time. It was the first of the Chapel Hill Restaurant Group restaurants, and who would ever thought that little restaurant would become, the chain of restaurants around the area.
I forgot Tijuana Fats.
Oh.
Yeah, it became the Cat's Cradle, but that was, yeah, it
Was it food at the shop?
There's no food to shut down. Yeah, there's peanuts to shut down.
Golly. Lucky to get out of the shack.
That's right.
Look at lean-to.
As an English major, also thankfully not a whole lot of studying involved, mainly just reading and a lot of reading. But I also was a huge sorority house studier. I was a member of Pi Beta Phi, and I was the director of Fraternity Heritage my sophomore year, so I had access to our archives room, and that was an amazing place to study, just surrounded by all of our chapter history books and all of the yearbooks from 1923 to 2023, that was great. And as far as eating, I go to Sutton's every Saturday for breakfast, and there are a few coffee shops on campus that I tend to visit, but, I was a Granville girl my freshman year, so we had our own dining hall there and, meals through the sorority as well.
My favorite study spots were always in Hill Hall, which is the main music building now on campus. It has a beautiful rotunda. If I was studying something that wasn't music, there wasn't much studying in the music department as well, besides just going down into the dingy practice rooms that probably haven't been renovated since 1975, and just singing or working on your instrument or whatever. Thin walls, you can hear everyone, and everyone just kind of accepts that we're all practicing, and we all probably don't sound very good right now, but by the time exams come around, we'll be okay. My favorite, I lived in Granville for 2 years also at the beginning of my college career, and I enjoyed it greatly. My bank account did not entirely because I was right on Franklin Street, so it was not a great situation. But my favorite spot, and still is to this day, is Four Corners. The drink deals are great if that's what you care for, but the meals are great. The atmosphere is fantastic. It's a great spot to just hang out with your friends, and it's close to everything on campus. So I met my friend for lunch there yesterday.
For me, my only productive studying is ever kind of by myself. So I spend a lot of times on campus and other places, but to say that was studying is probably an overstatement. If I was with my friends and we were just kind of talking the whole time with our laptops open. But on my own, I spend a lot of time at Davis Library. The top floor has these individual little pods, and they're kind of fully blocked off, so I always used to joke that they're kind of like horse blinders, and I can't look around. I can only look directly in front of me, which is good because I think I'm just pretty easily distracted. But that's where I spend a lot of consecutive hours if I was really trying to study a lot before an exam or something. Food-wise for me, Carolina Coffee Shop is a big one. I go there all the time with my friends and family. And one of the new places I was just thinking of actually is a new pizza place called Alpha Pie. It's on Rosemary, right kind of by where True is, sort of. But they have $5 pizza and they're open until 3 a.m. I think they're probably the most busy at 2:15 once all the bars close. But it's super good pizza, and they have this veggie pizza that they source stuff from the farmers market every weekend. So it's really good stuff too, and pretty cheap. But the big thing is that the slices are huge, probably 3, 4 X. It's crazy, and it's only $5, $6 for a slice. But it's super good, and I think it's become a staple of mine for this year.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to check that place out. I am curious how often you talk to your parents. So how often did you talk to your family, and how did you communicate with them?
I'll take it. That's a classic, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since you had a phone in Granville, you each had a phone per room. Otherwise, if you're on campus, you had a phone in the hallway. Pretty restricted on those hallways. I was fortunate to have a phone in the room. And we all know back in those days, you called home on Sunday night.
At 9 o'clock.
Because it was cheapest on Sunday night. It was expensive back in those days. So you only call home on Sunday night. God forbid they ever call your phone any other time during the week, because that meant something bad was going on. But seriously, it was Sunday night, once a week. The only time you'd ever contacted them.
Yeah, that was true first year. And then I moved into the fraternity house, and there was one phone, and it was a pay phone. So the answer was not so much. not so much at all. If I needed something like money, I might call. But generally that once every other week maybe.
I think I'm pretty similar to both of y'all. They did Sunday night, yeah, but I had to wait a little bit later because my hotel was on Central Time. So I had to wait till 10 o'clock on Sunday to call and collect. And then, but we did have funds in our room. I was in Connor and then I was in McKeever. We all had funds in our room.
Oh, yeah, women's school. Very
Yeah,
famous.
so already house, we had a little phone booth on the store, but,
Men's gonna set one in the hallway, that's it.
no, we needed the phones more.
My horror movie thoughts about my phone because my roommate, I had a roommate, my roommate stopped going to class in September, so he decided he would rather get up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and smoke dope with his friend in the other room, and then they would go to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. So, and then my other roommate just found out that there was a Watts line on certain phones, and that if you dial this series of numbers, you could dial through, because the university owned the phone company at that time, and it would connect you with any number of university cities, and then you could dial another number and you could dial wherever. So he was calling Hawaii and I was calling New York and places, and I called my mother about once a week. That was the normal. I thought it was that was a normal amount of time. However, on my other calls later in the summer, I saw right before I left school that year, there was an article about FBI investigation of phone calls on that watch line. I went, that's curious. And so I'm sitting at home and the bing bong, and I walked to the door and they said, "Hi, I'm from the FBI. I'd like to talk with you." And I went, "Oh crap!" And so I knew exactly what. So I said, "Can we talk in your car?" And I went up to his car and he talked about it. And he was very nice, and he said, the university will handle it and everything like that. And I came back in and my mother said, "Who was that?" "Oh, it's just a friend visiting from out of town." And eventually Dean Schrader, who was really nice, called in and he said, "We're not going to make you guys pay for these phone calls." He said, it shouldn't have access to it and everything like that. But later I felt so bad about that, I wrote a check, I made a contribution after getting out of school to the University of North Carolina at Charlotte because they paid for those phone calls. So, which was a bad idea because then I got solicitations. I didn't even go there. Why are you writing me? But it was very interesting. I learned a lot about phones at that time.
Well, nowadays, everybody's got a computer in their pocket. I don't call my parents on the phone probably as much as I should, but like I said, that's because they're here every other weekend for a football game or whatever. I do text my mom my Wordle score every morning, and she does the same thing.
I'm fortunate to live 15 minutes from home, whether I was in a dorm or now when I live in a house off campus. I saw my parents as much as we could figure out ways that we could my freshman year, because I was still trying to figure out the whole transition to college and everything. So I was missing home and trying to figure everything out. In my sophomore year, I got a car on campus, and I think I would say the novelty of going home kind of started to fizzle out a little bit because I could always go whenever I wanted to. So as I became more comfortable with the college atmosphere and started to find my place, I would drive home for the weekends less and less. And I would, my mom's a crazy texter, so I think she just texted me right now, so I might have to respond to her. But we keep in touch, and then now that my sister's at the university, my mom will be asking me about what she's doing, what she's up to all the time, as if I know. I don't. But we keep in touch for sure.
For me, I think I'm a little bit further from home. My parents don't frequent over here as much. But I think because of that, I come from probably once a week-ish, maybe. I don't talk to them on the phone that much either, but with text it's so much easier. And I'll just send them random things in passing or show my mom that the coffee that she likes is like on sale at Harris Teeter or something. And so we keep in touch in like a lot smaller ways, I think. I'm really excited for them to come up this weekend. Something I started to do with my brother, even though obviously we both have phones, is we would send letters to each other, like written letters back and forth. We did that my whole freshman year when I was on campus. And it was really fun and really nice, and it just feels a lot more personal and like intentional to kind of have these like handwritten letters from someone. And he's in the military, so I think because of that too, it was very much like letters from home. Like he has a phone, it was a little dramatic, but it was like really nice to kind of have that like extra personal touch to it. So I try to keep up handwritten letters and cards and stuff when I can, because I really think it's really different. So.
Thank you, that's really interesting. I'm sort of the sandwich in between these two, I think. We had cell phones, but they weren't smartphones, and there wasn't as much texting. So I had the opportunity to call my mom. Thinking back, I don't know how often I actually did, but my husband, I did. He was a Carolina student. We wrote a lot of letters to each other, but that's really interesting. I thought we'd get more letters, but it didn't sound like y'all were interested in that. So, moving on to athletics. Can you tell me what a typical football Saturday looked like for you? The clean version.
It's pretty clean. I mean, get up and go some, you usually would, we were in the fraternity sorority system, you'd have a date with somebody, there was a fraternity, you'd go to their place for a little something, and you'd walk to the game, and I remember being a few times in the card section, which I loved, but did they still have the card section? It was you had white and blue cards, and you had to go a little bit early for 10-minute training session, and certainly they put the cards up and it would spell something. It was really kind of cool. I'm sure things are all electronic, more electronic now. And then you go to another party after the game, and maybe another party after that.
I think you all would not understand. Back then, I got up and dressed in a suit. I mean, it was really a formal kind of thing to go to a football game. And I wore a suit.
Look at you now.
Literally every day. And so and back then there was where that Wings place is, and just over the line in Carver, there was a KFC. And if you had a car, you went to KFC and got chicken. And if you had a car, you went to the ABC store and got alcohol. So it was really a very like a social event to go to a football game like that. And there was Rabbit John's. Oh, Rabbit John's, it was the absolute best head cheerleader ever for University of North Carolina.
Who's going to tell the whole saga of Rabbit John's?
If you do, go ahead.
I'll tell you.
The thing about asking this question, it presumes memory cells that no longer exist. But the one thing I do remember is Sprite, which is what you could buy at the football games in the big cups, is really not the best mixer for bourbon. The hangover effect is real bad.
So I was super new with Robert here and Fred back there, so pretty much you got up, sit the game almost always at 1:30. It's pretty standard practice, get up, go to the house, break, go to the game, take a nap after the game. And then we had a separate party house, we always had good bands back then, it was great. So that was a complete set. My freshman year I was in the band, so, do that routine of marching on the field at halftime and so forth. It was that year with the Gator Bowl fall 71, so that was a lot of fun. And went to the beach party with Rabbit Giles.
Did you really?
Yeah, well, some of the cheerleaders too. So it was a good beach party, but we'll leave that there. But anyway, that was great. I will say, I'll share this personal story. I'm probably one of the few people who ever got thrown out of Kingdom Stadium for public drunkenness. It's just kind of hard thing to achieve, but I did achieve that. You're right about the fixing. I took a pint of bourbon and a pint of rum. And you should be drinking the same thing, during the game before halftime. So, I went up to the restroom and somebody came out and said, no, we don't allow public drunkenness in the stadium, you have to leave. So they took me outside the gate and leaned me up against the fence. I don't know my friends are going to find me. Fortunately, the guy was sitting there did find me somehow and got me back to the dorm there, but there were no good rules back in those days.
Bad idea to mix clear and dark liquors.
Yeah, but now I know. I don't
You
think
should know. Veronica, do you know the whole story about Rabbit Jaws?
Oh, boy.
We got time.
He was the head cheerleader, he was like a stand-up, he was a stand-up comic. He didn't do the cheaters, he was just like this front man and just hilarious. And I guess he was head cheerleader like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And then he graduated, and like several years later, there were some wrongdoings on the NC State campus involving women. And were you involved in any of that?
No. I think he was running around flashing or naked.
Something like
Yes.
that. Yes.
Yeah, I run around naked.
Smeared in oil.
Yeah, that was,
I had a hard time tackling him.
yeah.
He did some time, I think.
I think he did.
He did some time.
So why did they call him
I
Rabbit?
don't know.
Do you know?
I don't. I think he died.
We can Google that. I'm
But
All right, so students.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, but I feel like football games have always been a lottery system, is that correct? Where you have to apply for tickets? Yeah, so is that?
Not for mine.
Well, I was
But for y'all.
for class of 25, yeah. I guess after the pandemic, they went to a lottery system for student tickets for football. So it's been quite hard to get student tickets for athletic events in my experience. There have only been a few that I've been lucky to go to and sit in the student section, but I am super grateful that my parents have season tickets for football and basketball games, which has always been really nice. They also are pretty notorious tailgaters, so I have to admit there have been more occasions where I've been getting down with my parents in the Bulls lot than in frat court, so my experience is probably a little bit different.
I have a question. How much larger is your class than our class was?
I would say our graduating class might be
I think your incoming class was 4,500.
49, yeah.
And
Graduating this year is 4,049.
so
Okay.
it's a lot. It's about 50%. About 3,000.
3,000 or so, I think.
Around 3,000?
Yeah.
So they open up the lottery during football season, I believe, to all undergraduate students. I think graduate students as well. You just need to put in your PID or your ID information. What's different, I think, between football and basketball is football doesn't give you tickets based off of seniority. I think they filter you a little bit based on seniority, so seniors and juniors are usually a little bit more likely to get tickets than underclassmen, but there's also a program now called Carolina Fever, which is a great program, where it encourages underclassmen and new Carolina students to attend lesser attended UNC athletic events. A lot of tennis, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey.
Good.
As the year goes along, if you sign up for this program and you show up to specific games, they call them fever games, you get fever points. And the more points that you accumulate if you go to more games and support the teams that don't get as much support as the football team or the basketball team, you get more assured admittance to larger events, specifically the Duke basketball game. My two of the freshmen and cliffhangers that I know very well now, when I was a junior last year, they spent the entire first semester in the fall going to every possible Fever women's basketball game, the whole 9 yards. We won the field hockey national championship, so it probably made things a little bit more fun for them. But for their freshman year, they had accumulated so many points that they had surpassed so many of the upperclassmen in Carolina Fever that they had phase 0 front row bleacher tickets for the Duke basketball game. And we did win that game. It's super impressive. I never got involved in that because we usually do a lot of performances during the weekends. So when I didn't have a lottery ticket, it wasn't the worst deal in the world. When I did have a lottery ticket, we made a weekend out of it because there were only so many that I got. So we would always go out on Friday night, usually the night before the game. Saturday morning you wake up and you know you got a busy day ahead of you. Busy for a lot of reasons. So you know what they say, hair of the dog, and you just keep going. You just power through, and then usually you crash by the end of Saturday, but the games are always so much fun. I think the atmosphere may have gotten a little bit tamer, I think, since COVID, a little bit, unfortunately. But game days are still incredible here.
Yeah, for me, I think I echo a lot of things that Scott and Abby have been saying. Especially this year, I guess because our football team isn't the best, we've had a lot of new games, which aren't my preference. I love like the 7 p.m. game time because you have the whole day and you don't have to get up super early or start thinking about drinking at 9 or 10 a.m. To be prepared for it. But this year especially, I made a point to go to as many games as I could. My 2 roommates actually went to every single ticketed sporting event at UNC this year, and I tagged along with them for most of them. I missed fencing and rowing, but when I tell you we were out at cross-country meets and golf and all this stuff, it was really cool and super fun and a really good way to get fever points that helped for kind of all of the games, and especially the Duke game. So that kind of worked out nicely this year, but I really enjoyed being able to basically see every D1 level sport kind of play this year, other than the 2 that I had conflicts with. So.
Thank you. Sounds like a lot hasn't changed from the generations when it comes to game day, but thank you for sharing. I want to start with the students with this next question. And the question, and if you need a moment to think about it, that's fine, but what is one piece of advice that you would give your, high school senior, freshman self?
I'll go first. This is a piece of advice that has been passed down in my family for first time in Carolina attendees, if you will, and that's to look at the ground when you're walking. The bricks have gotten really uneven over the years, and as silly as it sounds, it really does, it was a really good piece of advice because when the leaves start falling in the fall, the sidewalks get slippery, and I've seen people fall, and it's always unpleasant, yeah. But more metaphorically as well, I think it's also just a good piece of advice to kind of be cautious of what you're treading on and the things that you're doing because everything matters. You only get 4 years here.
I was one of the people that slipped on the sidewalk for sure. Whatever brick it was, I took it out of the sidewalk and I put it on my shelf as a memorial, and so I can remember to not be stupid. My best advice that I would pass down to my freshman year self, I guess it kind of goes the opposite of what you mentioned, but I would always say yes to more things. Say yes to anything that you might feel uncertain about, and with caution, obviously. But the transition between high school to college is so significant to me. It was so significant to me because it was the first time where I had to make every decision basically for myself. Besides the most important things, obviously, that my parents still had some control over, but my nights were free. I could do anything I wanted to. So it was fully on me to learn what to and what not to say yes to. And in a lot of ways, the best way to learn what is best for you, the people that are best for you, the experiences that you would carry with you over the 4 years, the best way to learn about what's most fit for you in college is to just start saying yes. Saying no means you're just not going to do anything, so you might as well start trying. It probably took me a couple years to start feeling more comfortable opening up to new experiences and new people, and I wish I got those 2 years back, because you never really know what might happen.
I've also slipped on bricks many times. I have fallen before as well. That was the thing our freshman year, at least I think more heavily than 2, I guess, because we were on campus. People will take bricks out of the sidewalk. So then especially, because it's not even uneven, it's just empty sometimes. And so people would take them and paint them. And keep them as a momentum from freshman year and stuff. That's always all of my students we all had bricks in our room, and then of course my parents would move me out. They're like, "What's in your bag? Bricks?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, maybe just one, not too bad." But for myself, I've actually been thinking about this because my sister is going to be coming here in the fall. She's going to be a freshman here, which is a little surreal since I'm finishing up, and she'll like re-enter as I'm done. But I've been thinking about what to say to her, what I've been telling her. And I think the biggest thing for me is just kind of like embracing your humility. When I came here, I was definitely like a big overachiever, and I was really incredibly humbled the second I stepped foot onto campus. Just really with the academic rigor, but also just being around so many different types of people that just like weren't around in my really rural southern small town. And so I wish that I had more immediately been really open to just like a lot of different things, and also more so just being willing to like accept help. I used the Writing and Learning Center resources so much my freshman year, which was just kind of like accountability people. So I would meet with an advisor like once a week, and they'd be like, "So, like, you have an exam in 2 weeks," and I'd be like, "Yeah." And they'd be like, "Have you started studying?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Okay, but like, how are you actually gonna implement that in your day to day?" And so it's really helpful for me to just really kind of learn how to study and learn how to like be prepared for like the rigor that kind of exists here. But I didn't start doing that until my spring semester here, my freshman year, and I think I really would have benefited from it before. Just because at first I was like, "No, I know everything, of course I do." And so I think just being able to more early on kind of accept that I really know absolutely nothing would have been helpful to me. So.
Well, thank you for reflecting on those last 4 years. Now I'm going to ask the class of 1975 to reflect on the last 50 and think about what is one piece of advice that you would give your college self if you could today.
Come on.
I could get my college self. You go.
Well, I like to say yes. Well, that was really good advice. There's such a cornucopia of things available to you here that, doing more of it would have been a better idea. It also, I really wish I'd understood drop ed, because I never would have been there.
Ask a question.
Yeah, you're tied in just a little bit here. Martha's chair.
Yeah, I think, you're saying yes, I think I wanted to say no. I jumped into college and got involved in everything from day one. My brother had been there 4 years, so I kind of knew some of the things going on. And probably would have gotten study more, got less involved in things, going forward with that. But I would tell the class of 2025 here that in 50 years, this is what you're going to look like. I just plan ahead because this could be you in 50 years.
That's a hard question for me to answer because I came here so terrified, never having seen this place, no one. I would agree, get involved in anything that you get involved in. I think that will help make your experience a richer one.
When I came to Carolina, my goal was to meet as many students from my fellow students as I possibly could. And I think that I did that over the course of my 4 years as an undergrad and as a law student. I think you never know where life will take you, and you never know how the folks you encounter at Carolina can help you. So I say that from my own perspective. What piece of advice I could give myself, I would say, don't forget to go home and spend some time with your mom. I mean, I did that. I didn't do that enough. And, I regret that my mom didn't live to see me become a judge, because she would have been so proud of that. And having a grandchild made me realize how much my mother probably went through with me, because I was pretty much a terror. I did all kinds of stuff to get injured and hurt and that kind of thing. But I mean, Carolina is just a one of a kind place, and I'm so grateful that I got to be here.
Thank you. I could ask you guys questions all day, and I promise I won't. But before I continue, I did want to open it up to our audience to see if anyone had a question. Yes.
I thought of three things that were really different. We preceded the oldest of these young folks. So it was 7% women when we came. That's an elephant in the room.
Lucky
Yeah,
women.
Freshmen couldn't come unless they were nursing, pharmacy, or med tech. The other thing was sports medicine. There was that huge sports medicine complex there now. When we were here, it was her aunt who was in the basement of Woolen Gym and had a room not much bigger than a closet. And she was a nurse, and that was the total sports medicine place. And the other thing was we had Woolen Gym and the tin can. And y'all have all this massive sports complex everywhere you look, so you just really thought.
I have a question that I would like to ask both 75 and 25. And you can pass on this if you wish. And it's not meant to incriminate or embarrass anyone. What is the one biggest mistake that you wish you had made in your 4 years in college?
I gotta go. This was not incriminating. I took the end of my sophomore year. I was looking for my second major, and at the beginning of the semester, I had thought that I wanted to apply for Gillings and pursue nutrition. And I was really interested in it. I had signed up for the chemistry classes and the biologies and all that, not knowing what I was getting myself into. And by the time the semester started, I had realized I had already missed the deadline to apply for the public health school. So I just put that away and I stuck it out in the classes. I figured I wanted to just hold on to one of the two. I signed up for Chem 101 and Bio 101 in the same semester. That was a mistake in itself, but I decided, let's drop one, let's just hold on to chemistry, because why not? Walked into the class, it didn't take me long to realize that I had made a mistake. That is one of the first classes that you take as a pre-med student, as anyone who's way smarter than me that doesn't do music, that wants to go to med school or graduate school in something way smarter than something I'm qualified for. And I realized very quickly, when I got into my recitation and we were introducing ourselves, and there were a lot of chemistry majors, a lot of exercise sports science people, a lot of actual STEM majors, and I was like, damn, Scott, I'm a sophomore and I'm a music major. And everyone looked at me as if I had just stepped off of Mars, and I did not need to be there at all. I ended up declaring an exercise sports science degree major near the end of the semester, which did not require chemistry. Unfortunately, it actually required biology, which I had to take the next semester because I screwed up a little bit there. So I ended up pass-failing the class and had to stick it out because I was worried about withdrawing from the class too late in the semester. It's kind of a boring story, but certainly the hardest class I took at Carolina, and I took it for absolutely no reason.
Growing up super close to Carolina, Scott, I don't know if this was your experience, but there were quite a few people from my high school who came, and thankfully there was a little bit of space and separation just because I did take a gap year, so all of my friends were a year older than me here. But I think the biggest mistake that I ever made was living with one of my high school best friends. As I'm sure you all know, roommates can not always be great, and just because somebody's your best friend doesn't mean they're going to be the greatest roommate. And unfortunately, that friendship was very quick to fizzle out as soon as we moved in together, and it's still something that I think about and regret all the time.
I think I can kind of echo Scott. The first thing that came to mind for me was just simply Econ 101. Just not for me, never was. And I think taking it like fall my freshman year, like out of my first class year, really like made me think that like maybe I wasn't cut out for Carolina. But obviously I was, and I made it in here. But I definitely would have just not taken it at all, to be honest, because I also ended up taking it for no reason. I thought I wanted to be a different major. So yeah, that class was not needed for me.
One semester I took a class and I can't remember what it was, and I didn't like it and I dropped it. which got me down to 12 hours for that semester. And I realized at some point I was going to have to make that up unless I went to summer school, which I couldn't really afford to do. So then I had to take 18 hours one of the semesters, and it was probably the toughest semester I ever had in undergraduate school. But the amazing thing was I had the highest single GPA that 18-hour semester that I had in my undergraduate years. So it turned out very well, but it was really tough doing that.
Well, I've already talked about German 1. And we didn't have 101, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There was no, and then it went to 21 or 31. I can't remember. Yeah, 21, 31, 41, so we didn't have all this 101. Anyway, the German 1 was a big mistake, and I think just, again, maybe not being so frightened when I was not putting myself out as much the first semester or two, just getting to know more people, because I was really kind of scared, not scared to death anyway.
You know, Nia, I think hit the nail on the head, is, you know, get over your bad self. When you're coming up here from high school where you think you get everything, and you get here and guess what, you don't know anything. And I didn't learn that quickly enough. And that got me a little bit behind the 8 ball for a while. You know, just figure out that you really do. You know, I what Carl said, you know, yeah, the semester you're taking 18 hours, all you're doing is working and studying. You do it really, really well. I irritated the heck out of my mom because I got a 4.0 my last semester, my senior year. She's like, why aren't you doing that again? I didn't know how. And, you know, it was better to get over the high school thing a whole lot more quickly.
But do I have anything besides going out and kicking the stadium? That's awesome. Did anybody else in this room saw a guy back there run naked through campus?
I knew I recognized you.
I'm going to tell the story of, you know, from the 25 show. Back then, you had radio, TV, and newspaper. And how in the spring of '74 it got so widespread that the streaking was going around the country. And it spread, and campus after campus tried to outdo each other on this. And I was a resident advisor in Bramble at that time, so it should be out running around naked at the campus. So that's a good example. But the last big one, which was 1,000 people, yeah, regular. So I said, I gotta do this. So I had friends living in Maine, which was the center of the star. So I went down there, we undressed in the guy's room, and we were going to stand in the hallway. This many people lined up in the hallways, down the stairs, and so forth. We're all naked. And you know, you can't run the bump anybody when you're naked. And so I slowly started moving. And we were down the stairs, we were out the pack, and little I know, eventually the assistant register director of that college, but anyway, that campus, out the back door, and then down towards the student union. There's all those naked people running down the street. I was somewhere about the middle of the pack. I was in the back, I certainly wasn't in the front. And we get down, we cut by the student union, and go toward the undergraduate library. The camera set up on the portico of the undergraduate library. You see the film on CBS or whatever. Everybody, food, other people waving and sharing and so forth. And then it took you up through the clock there, through South Building. And then opened the door to the South Building, both sides blocked them open, so you could run straight through, not through the door. And I remember this guy streaking on crutches. Well, Chris, that's what they were on, to get food there. And we run through there, and said, oh well, back the street, that kind of main door to get our clothes on. And then people still coming naked out of our guys dressed. Well, there was a bunch of people there. And I told the guy last night about the guys on the VW. Had the Volkswagen naked, right, guy? Yes. Yes. Really culprit there. I'm not necessarily ashamed of it, but it was a lot of fun and historical.
It has the record for one day.
Yeah, but as you were saying, they called the South Campus resident advisors to go to North Campus and keep order.
cramming for a final that particular time. I'd also hurt myself by falling down a window well at a fraternity house while I was shooting baskets playing horse with somebody. So I had this badly bruised rib, so I'm cramming for this final or some kind of major test, so I missed the whole thing. That's my biggest regret.
What do you want to
That's a great question. Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more question if anyone has any. Oh. Okay. Up here, and then maybe we'll have time for back there.
An observation of the question. Is there a reason why the class of 75 is using a wired mic?
Which shows the passage of time. We can check.
All right, a question for the band member. As a band member, did you get access to all athletic events without waiting in line, like varsity players could go early to get tickets for basketball games and other events?
Yeah, I mean, if we were playing, you could, but, the marching band was massive. To play the basketball game like we see now was the pep band. And, not everybody could do it because of studying, and I didn't do that, so I wasn't in the game I could get into. So I was fortunate to go to play all the freshman year games. And then we came also to away football games. We played Notre Dame, Illinois with bus trips. And a lot of people couldn't go because they had chem labs and stuff like that on Friday afternoons. So I went on all those trips where I wouldn't normally be able to because, I was a freshman. So, but it was, if you were playing those events, you could get in, sit with the band, play with the band, and so forth. You didn't get the other activities if you weren't playing, of course.
In the back, yes.
Rabbit Giles was well known for having a motel key from the Watts Motel hanging out his back pocket. He actually died in 2019.
We looked that up, yes.
The other thing I want to say is, having been fortunate enough to remain in this community for the entire time, I've known Carl Fox for many years. My husband was an attorney. And Carl has had an illustrious career here and been well known for many important things, but I think his best achievement is making the best cheesecake you ever could.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. And I did have one last question. It's a real short one. If you could describe your time at Carolina in one word, what would it be?
Not that one.
No explanation, just one word.
Fun.
Yeah, one word.
I can't say one word.
Yeah, I'd say blissful.
I was going to do blissful, but now I'm going to do life-changing.
That's good.
Incredible.
Rewarding.
Transformative.
That's a good one.
That was a lot faster than this meeting. I think surprising.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know we're getting close on time, so I want to make sure we stay on schedule and just thank you. A big round of applause for our panelists. For you all, and thank you for being here. So we're going to have a short lunch break. The next enrichment event session is back in this room at 1 o'clock. It is Live and Let Die, How to Have Candid End-of-Life Conversations. So this was really something that the class of 75 requested, and we're happy to be able to provide this session in a professional setting that hopefully helps you in the future. And so one other reminder is that if you signed up to walk at graduation and requested a parking permit and have not received that, if you could, you have the option of picking that up today from 1 to 5 at the Alumni Center or at the Blue Bash party tonight. So if you're going to the Blue Bash party tonight, just pick up there. If not, 1 to 5 at the Alumni Center. They have your parking permits for graduation. With that, just a big thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your